All right, guys, welcome to the fifth video, or the fifth key knowledge of this outcome: recruitment methods, internal and external. Now, as you can see here, we're combining two of the key knowledge dot points. Kind of makes sense. So recruitment methods and the advantages and disadvantages of each, which is what we'll cover. And then internal, intranet and word of mouth, and external, such as websites, online recruitment agencies, and social media. So that's what we're going to be covering here. Okay. So first off, what is recruitment? So if you needed a definition of recruitment, that would do you very nicely there. Recruitment process which involves identifying, locating, and attracting a pool of qualified applicants for a vacant job position. Now, the whole idea, the whole kind of aim of what you're trying to do here is to attract the right people to the right job. Okay. And then from this pool of people, once you've got your pool of potential candidates, what you then do is you select a number of applicants to progress to the selection stage, which is actually the next key knowledge dot point. So as far as recruitment is concerned, I guess for our purposes here, we're defining it probably slightly differently to what we would use like in real life. So if we talked about a recruitment process in real life, we'd probably talk about, getting CVs, interviewing candidates, that kind of thing. But that interviewing part actually sits in the selection stage as far as we're concerned on this course. So recruitment, the recruitment part of this is just trying to work out where our potential candidates are, so locating them, attracting them to apply. So basically what we're saying is here that recruitment kind of ends where you have a pile of CVs, essentially. You're then going to look through to find your ideal candidate for the position. Selection then starts. Once you've got your pile of CVs, then selection, of which interview is one of the kind of more obvious steps, I guess, that you'd be familiar with. But there are many others. When we get onto selection, you'll see there's lots of different ways in which we can select our candidate from our pile of potential resumes or CVs, not just interview. But the point is here, recruitment is just finding the candidates and attracting them, getting them to apply. Once we've got our kind of pile of CVs, if you like, people who've applied, that's as far as this recruitment process, as far as we're concerned here, stops. Okay. Now, when you are going through this whole recruitment process, okay, what is it you're thinking about? What is it you're looking for? Now, obviously, you're going to be looking for a certain skill set. And this is all dependent on the job. You might need a certain amount of experience. And if you think about job ads that you may have seen, this will kind of make some sense. You'll see, they'll list the skills that they want. They might say, we need 2 years experience in a similar sort of role. So you might be looking for a certain skill set. You might be looking for a certain level of experience. You might be looking for certain qualifications. And you might be looking for certain personal attributes. Okay, a classic one you see in job ads is, must be a team player. Okay, that's not a specific qualification or a skill, it's more an attribute. Must demonstrate resilience. So these are attributes which kind of might be particularly important to particular roles. So that might be part of what you are kind of recruiting around when you're recruiting for that particular role. Now, I've also got down there culture fit. Okay. Now, this is a really important aspect of recruitment. Okay. Certainly, yeah, you're looking for certain skills, you're looking for experience, you're looking for the qualifications, you're looking for those attributes. Okay. But culture fit is kind of where a lot of people go wrong when they're recruiting to a position. Okay. And what we mean by culture fit is this person going to fit in with the team? And the culture of the business. Okay, are their values aligned with everyone else's? Basically, are they just going to fit with the rest of the people that we've already got? Or are they going to be like personality clashes? Is this the kind of person who's going to work well and fit in well with the team that we already have? Now, that is something that's often overlooked in recruitment. It's kind of more the unsaid stuff. And when you get into particularly the selection process, a lot of that really should be trying to work out is this person going to be a good cultural fit for our business? The skills, the experience, the qualification, the attributes, it's kind of much more straightforward. But the problem is a lot of people recruit based just on those and they don't think about the culture fit. More people leave a business because of the culture fit and issues associated with that than those first four things on that screen there. Less people leave because they don't have the right skills, experience, qualifications, or attributes. It's more often that they leave because of culture fit issues. So it's really important to get that kind of right in the first place. So the focus when you are going through this recruitment process, okay, for this particular position, are we thinking more about those technical skills that the person needs, the qualifications? Qualifications might be very, very important. Like there might be certain positions where legally a certain qualification is required. There might be positions where it's just a certain qualification is preferred, but obviously you would be aware of that when you're recruiting for the position. Personality, hobbies and interests, is that stuff going to matter? Again, that's kind of more around this culture fit. Certain types of positions and certain types of businesses, it's kind of important that really personality is important. Like if you're recruiting for, salespeople, you need people with a kind of vibrant, bubbly, I hate that word, but bubbly, kind of outgoing personality. You don't want people who, are going to be too shy to talk to people. Because at the end of the day, if you're selling to people, talking to them is kind of a fundamental part of that. Hobbies and interests, certain positions. I don't know, like, for example, I buy a lot of sort of 4x4 and camping gear. And when you go to those types of businesses, the people that work in them tend to be kind of enthusiasts and passionate about 4x4 and camping. And that's really important because, they kind of are familiar with the products. They have a passion for the products. So if you're running that kind of a business, it sort of makes sense maybe that, the people that you recruit are into those kind of pastimes and activities as well. So that will apply to some jobs and some businesses more than others, but it's worth thinking about. So I guess what we're saying is here, you need to think about before you start your recruitment process, what is it that you're really looking for? That combination of the skills, the experience, the qualifications, and those attributes, thinking about the culture fit, who's going to fit in, the personality. Are you interested in their hobbies and their interests? And, you're going to kind of come up with an overall snapshot that you're kind of trying to recruit to. And you're going to try to find the best person to fit that profile that you've decided that you kind of need. Now, you remember in the study design bullet point, it did mention internal and external recruitment. So that's kind of where a lot of the focus on this particular key knowledge is. Okay. So internal, all that means is that you're hiring just from within your own business. Okay. And then external recruitment, it means you're looking outside of your own business for the candidates. So internal, looking within, external, looking outside of the business. And I guess what this is all about is, when you're going to go through a recruitment process, is one better than the other? Look, realistically, in the real world, far more common is to do an external recruitment process, or at least a combination of both. That's pretty common, where you're looking internally and externally. It's very rare that you would just look internally. Some businesses do prefer to do that. I'll give you an example when we get there. But generally speaking, I would suggest that most recruitment campaigns are kind of a combination of both. But individually, they certainly have their advantages and their disadvantages. So first, let's focus on internal recruitment. Okay, so we've just said this is the recruitment where the pool of candidates that you're going to consider comes only from within the business. You're not looking outside of the business at all. Now, what this does, it gives the employees that you have the opportunity for career advancement. Okay, so everybody in your business knows that, you'll recruit from within. So it allows people to maybe transfer to other parts of the business, not necessarily a promotion or a more senior position, but if opportunities arise in other parts of the business, if you're internally recruiting, it allows people from, part A of the business to apply for a role in part B to broaden their experience. Or it could be a promotion. So if you're looking for supervisors or managers, you look to that kind of pool of people that is being managed or supervised. So different ways in which this can work. Now, how this works is positions are advertised internally only, generally by intranet. So most businesses have an intranet these days, so an internal kind of website set up. Or it might be that the positions are emailed to all staff, but you're inviting applications just via this intranet or via email that only internal people have access to. Direct approaches, recommendations, word of mouth, that kind of all sits under the same umbrella. That's, if you're recruiting a position, you might know of someone in the business who would be good for that role. So you go and kind of have a talk to them, make sure they apply. You ask maybe other managers around the business if they know anyone who would be any good. So recommendations, that word of mouth, in a smallish business, you may well be aware of all the potential applicants, in other words, all of the staff in the business. But, you could be talking about, a business of thousands of people here. So you're not going to know everybody. So some kind of networking, recommendations, word of mouth, getting tips from other people within the business about who might be good for this position can become a really valuable kind of recruitment tool. Now, thinking about the advantages of internal recruitment, okay, the pros. Now, the first advantage is if you've gone down the internal process, the ramp up time when the person joins the business is generally going to be quicker. There's no induction needed. Now, when I say induction, we haven't covered induction yet. That comes in a later key knowledge, but it's a process that some of you who have a job will actually have gone through already. Imagine when you start a new job, they'll kind of go through this process with you to familiarize yourself with the business and the people within it, who you're going to be working with, what your job is going to look like. That might last an hour or two. It might last a week, depends on the role. But that's a process that is important that all new employees kind of go through. Now, why I say no induction is needed if you're an internal candidate, that's because you kind of already know the business. You're familiar with a lot of the process and procedures, how they operate. So you don't necessarily know the job role, but most of the induction is more associated with getting people familiar with the business and the people within it. So there is kind of no need to do that if you're recruiting someone from within the business already, because they're already familiar with the business. So in other words, that faster ramp up time, the idea is probably the person is kind of going to get up to speed a little quicker in the role if you've recruited them from within the business as opposed to externally from the business. Another advantage of the internal recruitment path is that incentivizes employees in the business and kind of acts as a source of motivation for them, because they know that when positions crop up, whether they're, like I said before, more senior, so they're a promotion, or if they're looking just to broaden their experience and maybe moving into other parts of the business, this allows them to do that. So it's a really kind of good motivational tool to have this internal recruitment path available to people so that they can kind of progress their careers within the business, which is good also for the business because it means you don't lose people to competitors. Also, it is cheap. There's no advertising costs, no agency fees, and we'll get onto those when we look at external. But basically, running an internal recruitment campaign is generally far cheaper than going externally. There are lots of different costs associated with external recruitment, which we'll look at when we look at external recruitment, and those are saved if we go down the internal route. And finally, the risk generally of getting a wrong hire, and we've talked about wrong hires in an earlier key knowledge, and the risk of doing that is really important, particularly when the business is smaller, of kind of getting these hiring decisions right the first time. So there's a lower risk associated with coming internally, because the business knows the employee already and the employee knows the business. So you see with a couple of those, I've put culture in red as well. Earlier, I was talking about the importance of recruiting around culture. And if you think about it, these two things are around, these are cultural issues. You're lowering the risk because the candidate is already familiar with the culture of the business. Presumably they kind of already fit in with the culture because they've been working well within it already. So that's why I've just highlighted those two, just to kind of demonstrate again and come back to this point that culture is a really, really important thing to think about when you are recruiting for your business. Now, the downsides or the disadvantages of internal recruitment, because there are a few of those. Now, first off, if you're just going to only go down the internal recruitment path, there is a risk that you might be kind of promoting employees past their competency level. So in other words, you're putting people into positions which they're not yet capable of doing, they're not quite ready for, but because you're going internally, this is kind of how you set things up. You end up, just kind of promoting people past their ability, basically. And that's obviously not a good thing. There is the loss of opportunity to bring fresh eyes and new ideas into the business. Now, there's a lot to be said for bringing new people into the business from other businesses, whether those other businesses are competitors. That can be really useful because then it gives you an insight into how your competitors kind of did certain processes, which can maybe help you improve your own, or even coming from completely different industries. That can, again, give you a fresh perspective on some processes and procedures and things that might work in other industries that could work in your business. And if you're only recruiting internally, you're kind of missing out on that opportunity to get that, get those fresh eyes looking at your business and those new ideas. And you tend to kind of just then carry on the same trajectory that you always have done, which is not always a healthy or a positive thing in business. Rivalry and infighting can occur as well. If you think about it, if you've got people all kind of vying for the same position, they're in the same team and there's a position that comes up, or they know there's a position coming up, you get some internal rivalry between staff members, which obviously can kind of have a negative impact on the morale of the team and how everyone's getting on. And particularly then when there is an internal recruitment process and, maybe a few people internally have gone for it and obviously only one is successful, those unsuccessful internal applicants, there can be a level of resentment there. It can be difficult for them kind of to move past that decision and kind of get on with the managers or even the people that they lost out in that promotion to. And sometimes it means they leave the business. And the fact that they did not get that internal promotion doesn't mean they're not a great worker. It just means they didn't get that promotion because someone was maybe stronger. So there is a risk that you lose people because they just go, look, I'm not going to get promoted here. I need to move to another business. So that can cause some issues. And the final one there, backfill is required. So what we mean here is, if you think about it, if you're recruiting from within, once you've filled that position, then you need to fill the position that the person you've put into the position has come from. So in other words, you're kind of filling two jobs. And then potentially you need to fill that position once that position is gone. So this idea of backfill is, filling the positions of those people that have got their promotions or their transfers. So hopefully you get what I mean by that. If not, make sure you ask. But that is definitely an issue when you're just recruiting internally. It's like a never-ending chain. You just keep having to go, keep refilling the position that that person just got the job for. Limited pool of applicants, of course. This is probably the biggest negative of internal recruitment. If you're recruiting just from within the people that you've already got working for you, instead of the whole world out there, obviously the potential pool of candidates that you're looking at for this position is going to be way, way smaller. And is that ideal? Are you really going to end up with the very best person for this job if you're just looking within your own four walls and not considering all those other people out there working in competing businesses or wherever else they might be? Big negative of internal recruitment. I would say probably the number one there, just literally the size of the pool of candidates and the potential that you're kind of looking for that you're going to fill this position from. Now let's move on to external recruitment. So obviously this is where the pool of applicants comes from outside of the business. So what you need to do here is choose from a range of different methods to locate and attract those candidates. And there's almost an endless list, or endless methods by which you can do this. Advertising on the internet, whether that's on your own website, It could be advertising on Seek, My Career, Career One. There's endless job websites in Australia that are used for this. Seek would be by far the number one, the market leader. So seek.com.au. Pretty much almost every job ends up on Seek, if it also ends up on some of the others. Do you advertise in a local newspaper? Do you advertise in the national press? There's obviously some pretty huge costs around doing that. Actually, advertising in a local paper is really not very cheap. You're talking for several lines of a job advert, quite a few $100s. For a kind of third of a page in the national press, you're often looking at over $10,000. Even a Seek ad can be $200 to $300. What businesses, especially larger businesses, tend to buy packages. So you buy kind of ads, in packs of 20, 50, 100, and you kind of use them up over a period of time. And then obviously you kind of get like a discount for bulk buying. But still, there are expenses around doing that. Using a recruitment agency, probably the most convenient way to recruit. Basically, what you do, you ring up the recruitment agency, you talk to a recruitment consultant, and this is what I did for 10 years. So I was one of these recruitment consultants. And you say, okay, I need this kind of person, and you give them the details of what you're looking for, and then that recruitment agency, that recruitment consultant, then goes away and finds that person for you, and they basically go through the process that you could go through yourself. They'll write ads, they'll advertise on Seek, and they'll go through the whole interviewing and referencing and all stuff, which again is part of selection. But basically what you're doing is paying a recruitment expert to run the entire process for you. Really, really good, because it means it doesn't take you any time, and also, if you think about it, most people in business, what they're good at in business is running their particular business. Most people are not experts in recruitment, whereas if you go to a recruitment agency, that actually is their expertise. That is what they're good at. That is what they do day in, day out. So it's a bit like going to an accountant or going to a marketing agency. For those aspects of your business, those people are experts in those fields. So all you're doing here is going to an expert who is someone who's an expert in recruitment. So there's more chance maybe that they'll get it right, make the right decision, than if you try to do it yourself. Of course, the downside of this is it's hugely expensive. It's probably the most expensive route to go, but it's a really good route in that it takes all of that work and that process away from you, and you're probably going to get a good result. Social media, word of mouth, using your contacts. The word of the mouth and the contacts can work in a very similar way to internal recruitment, but now you're talking to contacts outside business. You tend to find people, the longer you've been in an industry and maybe the more senior you get, you tend to be quite well networked within the industry. So, you put in a few calls to people who you think might be looking for a position, or you might have just identified somebody that think would be good for this job. You just pick up the phone, have a chat with them. So that kind of networking idea, and the social media becoming an increasingly common or popular way to recruit is great because it's essentially free. And LinkedIn. If you're aware of LinkedIn, LinkedIn is kind of like Facebook for professionals, but you find most professional people around the world now will have a LinkedIn profile, and a lot of recruitment. There's actually recruitment tools within LinkedIn, or people can just search people up that do particular types of jobs. And again, they can just contact them and say, look, are you interested? So this is becoming an increasingly popular and an increasingly sophisticated kind of method of recruitment now, this social media. There are other branches of social media are used as well, but I would suggest LinkedIn is probably the main one that is used for recruitment. Now, positives of external recruitment. Number one, the larger pool of applicants. Essentially, the pool of applicants you're looking at is kind of anyone. This chance to bring these, fresh eyes and new ideas into the business. So what I was talking about previously that you're missing out on, so the negative of internal. And look, this kind of gets a bit repetitive if you think about it. A lot of the negatives of internal recruitment will be the positives of external, and vice versa. So don't be afraid to kind of learn them that way and list them that way. Just if you're in a discuss question and you're talking about, these advantages and disadvantages, don't use the same one. Don't use the same disadvantage of internal recruitment as an advantage of external recruitment, because then obviously you're kind of being repetitive and you're double dipping. So make sure to keep them separate. But what I'm talking about here is, this idea again of just bringing in the value of bringing in fresh eyes from outside the business that can give you some really good ideas that you haven't thought of within your own business. Backfilling, I talked about previously, again, as the negative of internal. Well, if you're going to bring someone in from outside, you're not then leaving another position vacant. So there is no need to backfill. You're only filling one role instead of two, or potentially three or four, if that chain kind of continued. Can save time if you're going to use an agency. So like I said, you basically pick up the phone and you say, this is what I'm looking for. And then what happens is that agent then goes away and presents you. Normally it would be a few weeks down the track. They'll present you with either the ideal candidate, or it depends on how involved you want to be in the process as the business owner or the business that's doing the recruitment. Sometimes it might be the recruitment agency will provide you with a short list of 5 candidates who you then interview. It might be that you interview them with the recruitment consultant, or it might be that a recruitment consultant does that whole process as well and just presents you with the final successful candidate. So there's different kind of levels of service. But either way, it takes a lot of time and effort away from you, because you're kind of passing all of that workload over to someone external to the business. But like I said, the downside to that is it's costly. Probably the biggest fee that I ever charged in recruitment would have been around 40 something, maybe $50,000 for finding one person for one position. That was a senior position, but yeah, it can cost you a lot of money. But at the end of the day, in business, time is money. So if it saves you and maybe a bunch of other senior managers a lot of time, you could think of it as being quite cost effective as well. Now, the downsides of external recruitment: more time consuming and more expensive. Less time consuming rather, if you're going to use an agency. But if you're going to do it all of yourself by advertising, screening candidates, interviewing, doing the whole thing, then it can be really expensive. If you place an ad on Seek for a junior position, so a junior, position may be paying $15, $20, $25 an hour. When I did that 12, 13 years ago, I could have 1,000 applicants for just the one job. So I put one ad on Seek for a position paying $15, $20 an hour, 1,000 CVs come my way. For a more senior job, paying maybe several $100,000 a year, you might be looking at only 4 or 5 applicants. But if you're going to run the whole process, if you're not going to pass this over to a recruitment consultant and you're going to do it yourself, that's a lot of time to screen all of those resumes that are coming in. You're going to work out where you're going to advertise and go through that process. And then every time, an applicant, you've got to look at the resume, the CV, maybe look at their cover letter, respond to them, let them know if they've been successful or not. It can be a very time consuming process. And expensive because, like I said, you're paying recruitment costs, you're paying advertising costs, you're paying recruitment fees, whatever it might be. Obviously, this is compared to internal, where you're just doing it all in-house. Longer induction and ramping up time for the successful candidate. So I talked about this previously. Again, the flip side of this. So if you're bringing in someone who's unknown, you're going to have to get them familiarized not only with the job that they're doing, but with the business in general and how the business operates. So there's going to be a long induction period, and it's just going to be longer until that person is kind of, found their feet and is kind of up and running in the role. If you're going to go this route, it obviously limits career advancement opportunities for the existing staff. So if you're known for doing internal recruitment, those staff know that, when opportunities crop up, they've got a good chance. Whereas if you're going to run external processes or external alongside internal, then the staff that you have know that basically it's kind of open slather. They're competing against everybody. And obviously the chances of them getting that promotion or them getting that transfer that they really want are kind of much lower. So it doesn't act as quite such a kind of motivational tool if you're going to go external. And then finally, the idea of greater risk, because this new employee is kind of an unknown quantity. Again, if you compare this with internal recruitment, where you already know that person, or even if you do not personally know that person, other people within the business know that person and have vouched for them. Whereas this is someone that is a completely unknown quantity. But the caveat to that is that your selection processes, which we'll look in the next key knowledge, should minimize the risk of getting a wrong hire. But you can minimize the risk, but I would say there's still a greater risk of things kind of going wrong if you're going to bring someone in from outside as compared with bringing someone along who's already within the business. And that basically is everything you need to know on internal and external recruitment. That should help you carry out the activities we're going to do and answer the practice exam questions. So make sure you've got a really good set of notes on that, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers for now.